One, two, chicka boom a chick, it's your old buddy Kevin here from Happy Beard Games, your source for classic gaming goodness, and this is episode 3 of the Quick Play Arcade, my look at classic arcade games and their home console ports. Now today we're looking at one of my favorite games of recently, and that is Marble Madness. Yeah, Marble Madness. We're going to be checking it out on 2 different ports. One of them on the NES and one of them on the Nintendo GameCube, which is a little bit truer to the arcade original, as it's an arcade collection. Now this game here, Marble Madness, is an arcade classic once again. Its arcade version originally was published by Atari Games in 1984, and it was a commercial success. You see, in Marble Madness, you don't play as a character or a mascot or even a person. You play as a marble. Yeah, that's right, a simple marble. Some of the added realism to this game comes out of the arcade machine itself because it doesn't use a joystick or buttons. It actually uses a trackball controller that you slide your hand over, so it seemingly is a perfect fit for a marble game. Marble Madness is a racing game unlike any other. It's a race against time for yourself, or you can race against a friend on 2-player versus. And on that mode, unlike most other arcade games back in the day, you'll be versing each other at the same time on the same stage. So you'll be next to each other, racing neck and neck as these 2 marbles roll down the hill. However, on single player mode, you're racing against the clock in a maze-like track, going down as fast as you can to make it towards the exit. Once you make it towards the exit, it'll count up your points, and then your time from that stage will be carried over to the time limit on the next stage. There's a good sense of time as a resource in Marble Madness, as you're saving time from one level to be carried over to the next to make that level just a little bit easier for you. In some cases, some levels can be completed with just a few seconds left on the clock. The track or level itself is presented in an isometric, pseudo-3D viewpoint that gives a great sense of geometrical art. The game's design was inspired by M.C. Escher, who drew famously many pieces of geometrical-based artwork. To me, the sense of mathematical and geometric art sounds perfect for the world of a digital video game. But the gameplay itself was inspired by mini-golf, and it shows in the gameplay. You have a variety of stages, one after the other, presented in a maze-like fashion that you have to go through. It's like an obstacle course for your marble. Another aspect of Marble Madness that should not be forgotten is the sound. Yes, the sound is important to every video game, but did you know that Marble Madness was one of the first video games in the arcade that used true stereo sound? Before that, it was mono or simulated stereo, and on this game, it's true stereo sound, one of the first of its kind. It really shows in this game. The music is great, the sound effects are pretty good, and it does have a really nice sort of sound effect to it. It has a very wong sound to it, and it kind of fills up in a broad sound, and it's really nice to hear. It's pleasant on the ears, and not only that, but some of the music in the game is well written to the point where after you're done playing, you'll have it kind of stuck in your head for a little while. It's just a great music, great sound effect choice, and it uses a great sound chip from Yamaha. So today we're looking at 2 different ports of the game Marble Madness, one of them for the NES, which is a little bit downgraded from the arcade, but still holds up true in the gameplay, and the other one for the Midway Arcade Treasures on Nintendo GameCube, which is a really close port of the arcade original. So first we're going to look at the NES version on the Nintendo Entertainment System. One notable change on the NES version is the absence of the trackball. Of course, on the standard NES controller, you only have the D-pad. You don't have a trackball, of course. Everybody knows that. But did you know that on this game, it actually compensates that by allowing 2 different control styles. You can play on 2 different degrees that you can select from on the main menu. It's up to you to play around with and decide which is your favorite of those 2 options. However, there is an unlicensed, third-party, trackball style controller from QuickShot called the QuickShot Trackball for the NES. So you can try that if you want. But in my opinion, there isn't really that much of a difference between the NES D-pad and the trackball controller. I know the trackball gives you more of a freedom in the gameplay, but on the NES, it by no means stops you from enjoying the game. Another change on the NES port is the sound. The NES is in mono sound. However, you can simulate that stereo with a cable, which is what I've done. So yeah, just get one of these splitters and you're good to go with some simulated stereo, which takes the mono and puts it on each speaker. The arcade machine had a higher quality sound chip from Yamaha. However, this NES version uses its own sort of NES chiptune style sound that you're more familiar with from other NES games. So it's not going to sound identical to the arcade. But it also does a great job of recreating the sounds and the music from each stage from the arcade original. And there's also a leaderboard which allows you to check your score after the gameplay, comparing it to your friends or yourself, save it for your own records. However, when you turn off the game, when you turn off the system, the leaderboards will reset, which is kind of sad. So make sure you write it down or take a picture. And also, this game has a pause feature. Yes, you can pause. Just in case things get a little too tricky or you have to leave at some moment, you gotta pause. Altogether, this NES port is good and a lot of fun. Don't worry too much about the missing trackball. That's it for the NES port. Let's check out the GameCube's Midway Arcade Treasures version of Marble Madness. On the Midway Arcade Treasures collection, which is available for the GameCube, the PlayStation 2, Xbox, PC, and PSP systems, we're playing it on the GameCube, you have Marble Madness along with many other great classic arcade titles. On the Midway Arcade Treasures collection, Marble Madness is very faithfully represented from its arcade original. And it also includes things like the score placements, the time placements, little pop-ups that tell you to finish the race. Those are all in the same positions as the arcade as far as I can tell. It's an identical port to the arcade, and that's possible on the more advanced hardware of systems like Nintendo GameCube. Now, Marble Madness once again still plays pretty much the same as the NES and arcade versions. However, there is of course the missing trackball, which I talked about earlier. In this case, you have a D-pad, a smaller D-pad, on the GameCube controller, which is very similar to the NES D-pad, only smaller. And then you've got the control stick, which will allow you to move in more of a joystick-like motion. I preferred using the control stick on this game. You also have the A button to accelerate your marble, and the B button to slow down your marble. Once again, you have 1 or 2 players, just like the arcade and NES versions. You have the level graphics that look just like the arcades, and you have the sound effects, which sound just like the arcades, as well as the music, which also sounds just like the arcade. I didn't run into any problems or negative impacts on the GameCube version specifically for Marble Madness, but this Midway Arcade Treasures collection comes with some bonus features for each of the featured games. You have a main options menu where you can change the game's options before you load the game. You can also change out the game's controller settings. You can save high scores to a GameCube memory card and load them as well. The Marble Madness game options include number of players, the difficulty level, the enabled or disabled 2-player continue mode, and autosave. In addition, there's a bonus feature mode where you can check out things like image gallery, read a little bit of history and trivia about the game. Some of the artwork includes the logos, the cabinet art, the manuals, and advertisements. Some of the historical trivia for this game includes details on how the graphics of the game were originally created, as well as some information about its designer, Mark Cerny. So that's about it for Marble Madness on the Arcade Treasures collection. Altogether, it is a good port of the arcade version, probably the best one out there, and it's available on multiple consoles, so check it out if you have one of those systems that can play it. And it still holds up well today because it's an arcade classics collection. So while Marble Madness might seem today like a simple arcade game, it actually paved the way for a few of the more well-known game designers of today. And one of those guys was Mark Cerny, the game designer of Marble Madness. He went on to produce the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation Vita, and worked on many of Sony's biggest video game hits. Yeah. On the NES port, which was worked on by Rare, none other than composer David Wise did the soundtrack. Now, it was mostly a port over or adaptation of the arcade original sounds, which is good because it holds up to the arcade, but it does have its own unique NES sounding music, so it doesn't sound quite as high quality as the arcade, but from what limitations there were, David Wise did a great job. And David Wise, of course, would go on to work on many other rare games, including the fantastic Donkey Kong Country series. And for the game's original publishers, Atari, this was their first game on the Atari System 1 arcade machine board. The game Marble Madness went on to directly inspire other game series, including Rare's Snake, Rattle, and Roll, as well as Sega's Monkey Ball series. Marble Madness has been ported over to many consoles, computers, and handhelds. It's appeared on the Game Boy, the NES, the Sega Game Gear, the Sega Genesis, and the Sega Master System, as well as on the Midway Arcade Treasures Collection, which was featured on multiple systems including GameCube, PlayStation 2, Xbox, PSP, and PC. Marble Madness is an arcade classic. It's got gameplay and level design that hold up well today, and historically has given a start to some of our favorite game designers of today. It's a fun challenge, and due to its simple premise, it can be enjoyed by all ages. Well, that's it for today's Quick Play Arcade. Today on Happy Beard Games, your source for classic gaming goodness. We checked out Marble Madness, and you can check that out yourself today in the arcade or on various home console ports. Now, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe this video. Yeah! Alright guys, thanks for watching. Bye!